Hello, and thank you for joining me again today on the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Today is the start of Season 3. It's hard to believe we're already entering Season 3 and we'll have hit 100 episodes soon. I want to continue bringing you stories of people who have gone through infertility and loss. I think sharing our stories is so important, not only for our own healing, but also in helping others know that they aren't alone. To help them know that there is someone out there in the world that has been through something similar to them. Or that even if we go through different types of infertility and loss, that we share many of the same common feelings and experiences. It helps us know we aren't, quote, weird or abnormal for feeling the way that we do. So I will continue bringing plenty of these episodes. This season, I also wanted to add in some group episodes to touch on big topics like pregnancy after loss, parenting after loss, trying to get pregnant after loss, and infertility. Plus, this season, I was able to interview some amazing loss dads to help bring new perspectives and give dads a voice. So basically, I'll be keeping the same content of the show, but expanding to bring even more interviews and topics. As always, I love hearing from you on things that have helped you from the show or things that you would like to see or hear on the show. You can always email me at Sarah with an H at journeyforjasmine.com, or you can contact me on any of my social media at journeyforjasmine. Today's episode is about the topic of pregnancy after loss. I have 4 amazing women who are sharing their experience of being pregnant after going through loss. Hello, everyone. Today we are here to do an episode specifically on pregnancy after loss. So I have 4 amazing people here, and I'm going to let them each go through and introduce themselves and tell a little bit about themselves. So Ashley, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Sarah. I'm so happy to be here with you ladies today and just talking about this great topic. Just to introduce myself, my name's Ashley Cooksey. I live in Los Angeles with my husband and 4-month-old baby Isla Rose. I actually participated in the rainbow skirt community just a few months ago. I borrowed the skirt in February and took a photo shoot with that. It was a very moving experience for me. I definitely had a moment in the photo shoot that I, had a few tears thinking about my son Declan and kind of honoring him while also having, a maternity shoot. So to tell a little bit about me, so kind of my loss story is it starts with getting married in 2022. My husband and I got married in November, and we quickly became pregnant. My son Declan was probably, a wedding night conceived baby. Fast forward to some travels. I was alone in India doing kind of an eat, pray, love trip when I found out I was pregnant with my son Declan. So it was a really special time. Everything went well with my pregnancy. And then all of a sudden, at 6 months, I was at a routine doctor's visit, and it was recognized that, my cervix had shortened, and I was in basically preterm labor. So I was admitted to the hospital and kind of held off labor for about 5 or 6 days on magnesium, but it was inevitable that baby Declan was going to be born prematurely. So he was born alive and well at 26 weeks, and he was immediately transferred to the NICU. However, at day 5 of his life, he did catch a bacterial infection from the hospital, and he passed away that evening. So he lived to day 5. And yeah, last summer I just did a lot of healing modalities, from kind of breath work circles, like grief circles, to just moving my body, seeking therapy, doing loss groups, small groups with like Return to Zero. And those helped a lot. And then fast forward just a couple months more. So this all happened in April of 2022 to last summer. I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, Isla Rose. And that just brought on a whole bunch of anxiety and fear. It was a tough pregnancy, but therapy helped me a lot. And, we did get her to 39 weeks, and we went ahead and had her on March 22nd of this year. So to kind of wrap up my story, my babies are only 11 months apart, and I really believe that they, kind of met somewhere in heaven or the universe or the stars before my daughter was born. And I really believe my son Declan kind of sent down his baby sister to be with us because we really needed her. So I hope my story wasn't too long, but I hope you caught some of my points there, but I'll pass it along.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing with us. Danielle, do you want to talk a little bit about yours?
Sure. So I am in Connecticut in the US, and I kind of had a similar thing to Ashley as well. I got to participate in the Rainbow Project this year, and same thing with my husband. After getting married, it happened pretty quickly, but that's because from the get-go, we were planning a family. So I kind of knew a little bit about all the things to do. And I started learning more, even more so after loss, because it's like all of a sudden you're like getting thrown into like the trying to conceive or pregnancy after loss journey. So for me, I always knew about kind of loss, but I guess like until you go through it, you don't realize how it's going to hit you. And so it was my first appointment ultrasound that we ended up finding out it was a miscarriage for my first. And so at that point, already like about 10 and a half weeks. And even though in theory, it was really 6 weeks of knowing after testing, that 6 weeks felt forever to get to that appointment. And I already felt so invested. So I was nervous going into it, just like having nervousness in general. And I didn't want to like feel like I gave it bad vibes. But then of course I get to like look at the screen, and like I already knew the tech was kind of like questioning things and making sure we had our dates right. And instead of just kind of doing the scan and waiting for the doctor, I already like started breaking down, knowing that something must be off. And I was like, my dates are not off. Like I knew exactly when things happened and things like that. So I no longer could even like look at the screen because they were like, my eyes were just so teary, and my husband like had no clue what was going on, and I did. And so it was just a really bad moment where I kind of was told by the ultrasound tech as well that I was shaking too much to have her get the pictures that she needed. So basically the first loss, other than just like having to make a decision from there because my body didn't want to do what it needed to, it ended up being almost like a month of still having to go through where the doctors were confused so that my body wasn't doing its job, because I chose to unfortunately use pills as my option because I was nervous about surgery. And ultimately I needed to have a D&C anyway, because after like almost a month, my body still was showing that I was having a lot of HCG in my body still, after going to the emergency room, because at work I had a situation where basically I hemorrhaged, and I worked in the hospital too, but I was determined to not be a patient in my own hospital and have everyone know. So I drove myself to another emergency room. And then after that first loss, we then about, I think it was like 5 or 6 months later, I ended up having what they determined as a chemical pregnancy. And I think at that point I was just going down a really bad road of thinking this might never happen for me, or for some reason my body wasn't able to keep a pregnancy. And then weirdly later, before going into more fertility doctors and interventions, just within like 2 weeks to 4 weeks later, I now have my double rainbow baby who was born in April of this year. We ended up finding out the month that our first was due in August. So it's like full circle right now because we're just about to approach August tomorrow. So basically, I just feel like for me, like I personally don't believe in coincidences. I feel like that was our first sending us this one because it happened in the same month that they were due. And that's really what I wanted. And I know it doesn't work out that way for everyone, but I felt like I needed that so badly because had I had gone through a full month of August back in 2023 when they were due, I don't think I would have ended up doing well mentally. So that's kind of my story. And I don't think I ended up telling too much about myself. I think I just kind of dove right into the story. But basically, this kind of consumed my life. And now being a mom, I think that has been my identity right now. And I need to find some other things as well in my life, but it's been great. And yeah, I feel like having a community and, being able to participate in this is like what has really helped get me through.
Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about
Thank you.
your story. Amanda, do you want to share a little bit?
Yes, I'm Amanda. I live in Northern California with my family. And so I've got a 3.5-year-old almost son, and now a 3-month-old son as well. And in between that, I had 2 losses. My first loss was a chemical. I became pregnant pretty quickly after getting my cycle back after my first son. And I, like, just a few days later, found my test was not darkening and then lightened and whatever. And that was sad. But it kind of put the spark in me and my husband that, like, we did want to have another baby. Like, we were like, okay, we are ready. So we started trying at that point to have another baby and got pregnant 2 months later with our daughter. And she made it to 39 weeks, but I had gotten preeclampsia, and it was such a strange case of it. Like, I've looked into so much about preeclampsia since, and I didn't have preeclampsia at all with my first and not with my third either, but it came on very suddenly and very severely, but with basically no symptoms. And my only symptom was my blood pressure was a little high. I had no swelling or, just like the common symptoms for it. So it was really shocking that it happened. And as soon as I was diagnosed with preeclampsia and went in to be induced, she already passed away that day. So that was really a very shocking and horrible experience. And so that was just a few days. She was like 39.5 weeks. And so that was really, really tough. And then we decided we wanted to try for our baby as soon as we could. So that was last March 23rd, 23 is when she was born. And then as soon as I could get pregnant again safely, we started trying, got pregnant in a couple of months, and thankfully that is our son who's here now. And he was just born this past April on the 28th. So he just turned 3 months a couple days ago. And he's been a joy to have. And it's something I feel like is not talked about a lot, is once the baby's here, how much conflicting emotions can happen. And even though I've had one before I had the loss, it still has been such a crazy few months. I mean, that I didn't quite expect. Yeah, anyway, I won't elaborate too much on that right now, but that's my story.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Katie, do you want to share a little bit?
Yeah, my name's Katie. I actually was on Journey for Jasmine's podcast. And my husband and I, we greeted our son, or we found out we were pregnant first after 7 months of trying, and with our first son. And at our 20-week anatomy scan, we found out he did not have a heartbeat. I was 21 weeks at that time. And I went a little bit against what I think the norm is, and I just waited a week to deliver him. I was able to wait, which I believe gave me, I was still in a shock phase, but it gave me more time to process, so that my birth, I felt, was, although it was tragic that he was not alive, my birth was a pretty spiritual experience and a positive one. So he was born February of 2022. And then I was advised not to get pregnant for 6 months. And then it took us an additional 6 months. We had had a chemical pregnancy and a miscarriage at 5.5 weeks in between that. So it's been, a long road to have an Earthside baby. And I've just been fascinated by the, pregnancy after loss journey, the parenthood after loss journey, because I'm in it now. And I'm so grateful for that, but it can come with so many contrasting feelings, like kind of all at once, just like grief. And I too like to think that my son met his older brother in heaven, and, that he can see him here with us, that he's much more connected to what's after this, because he just came from there. He's 8 months now. And so my pregnancy after loss journey was a lot of denial, if I'm being honest, especially the first trimester. But, even second trimester, it was, I knew we weren't I knew we were never really out of the woods when it came to potentially having the same thing happen. So denial was my friend. And I believe I was 30 weeks when I bought the first thing for Finn, my son now. And it just took a lot of time. I didn't do a baby shower. Didn't announce on social media, just very private about the journey, and only shared it with people that I really felt could handle everything that could happen. And the grief hit in really random times throughout that. Of course, I'm so grateful for my second son that's here, but there's always this ache of like, my other baby should be here too. Why did he have to die? So it's a continuing process that I'm grateful to have met all of you ladies, because being a parent now and navigating the fears that come up, of course, for any parent, but especially for someone who's lost a child, I feel like it's a layered process, and it's always comforting to know you're not alone.
Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about your story. So the first question I have, and anybody can answer first, but did any of you expect pregnancy after loss to be so hard?
I actually really expected, since I lost my daughter at 9 months, I really expected to be full on, like, just peak level anxiety for the full 9 months. And I was actually very pleasantly surprised that there was more peaceful moments in there, and more excitement than I actually expected. It was like, do not get me wrong, it was definitely really hard. But as soon as my daughter was stillborn, basically, my thought was, I will never find joy in pregnancy at all, ever again. It's just going to be torture the whole time. I'm willing to do it because it's worth it, but I didn't expect anything good during pregnancy, and it definitely ebbed and flowed. So I actually was pleasantly surprised by that. I think afterward, when I was coming down from a lot of that adrenaline from just the last year, I realized maybe I was operating on a higher anxiety level than I realized. Like, it kind of crashed after he was born. But I was actually surprised at that I did better than I expected. I thought I was going to do really, really bad for the whole time.
Did anybody else have anything to add?
I think mine was like mixed emotions too. At first, I thought like I'd be so super happy just to like be there again. But then same thing, like I have anxiety in general, so it just gets heightened with things like that. And so I thought that I wouldn't want to celebrate anything or maybe not announce right away. But then I think you just kind of learn in like a lot of groups too that you just almost want to be happy for every day that you continue to be pregnant. So at some point I had to, even if I wasn't feeling it or was anxious, I had to celebrate those moments that like certain milestones were good for that moment. And one of the like I actually had a pregnancy after loss coach that basically they tell you just that if there's no evidence in that moment that something's wrong, or as of the last appointment if things were good, then you need to hold on to that, because otherwise it's just not worth it, the way that I would spiral. So that's kind of how I would try to get through it, even though it was always filled with anxiety.
I always tried to tell myself that too. I'm like, okay, right now everything's okay. But then like 5 minutes later, I'd be like, but what if it's not now? It's been 5 minutes, you know? So definitely something I struggled with too. So did all of you decide to either announce your pregnancy or did you keep it secret?
I announced, I think I was like 16 or 17 weeks. I just decided to announce before the holidays because I kept it secret longer than I normally would have. But I just didn't want like a lot of questions. And that was kind of my main thing. Because I mean, losing baby at full term, it's kind of like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Hide that if I lose baby at full term again? Like, I'm obviously not going to. So I think that motivated me to just announce. And I think like Danielle said, like just celebrating the moments and milestones, even though I knew it wasn't promised, and I wanted my second son to have the same, like I still wanted him to be celebrated and loved the way that his older brother and sister were while I was pregnant as well. So I did still announce, and I had to force myself to not be in this like pessimistic spot, like I'll probably lose him, or I could, or whatever. So I think it helped to announce him, that my mindset.
For my husband and I think when we first saw that I was pregnant, we're hesitant. Our initial like gut reaction was like, oh, let's be cautious. Let's like wait a while to tell family. But we quickly realized that we needed the support from family no matter what happens. So we did tell family somewhat immediately, just because we kind of realized we would need support no matter what happens. And then we did kind of like a quieter social media post with like a little bit of a gender reveal. I had close friends that like missed I was pregnant until I was like inviting them to like the shower. They're like, oh, I like didn't really know you were pregnant. It just kind of kept it under wraps a little bit more. I definitely didn't take like the gestational photos that with my daughter and stuff like that. I didn't take a lot of pregnancy photos. So there was definitely a little less kind of celebration, I guess, with doing all of those kind of milestone moments this time around. And I don't know why that is. I guess I just kind of kept in my shell a little bit more when it came to those things. So it was definitely it was more subdued, I would say, with my rainbow baby.
I do want to say in my announcement that to me, I've seen other announcements of rainbow babies, but like as far as like my immediate community, I would never have known if others had gone through something until they commented online. But basically I wanted to be a voice because I felt like if I'm going to go through this, then at least, not that everyone has to do this in order to make it worthwhile, but I at least wanted to use it in some way. So in my announcement, I had put kind of like a warning to people if they wanted to unfollow me. I understood because I had been there, and just that I wanted to say that this was our rainbow baby and we had been through losses, just because a lot of people didn't know. And I just didn't feel right not honoring it myself. So I wanted to put a post out there just because I knew that there's other people that could be going through something and not wanting to speak up or feeling alone. So I wanted to kind of make someone that might have been through it as well aware of that. This isn't just like a happy announcement. It was like kind of like a hesitant announcement, but that we were grateful for this time around. And so I kind of made it about, like, I like the rainbow baby term, so I made it about that. and instead of announcing the date, I wanted to just say hopeful 2024, just because I just felt weird announcing the date. I felt still hesitant, even though I was announcing. So it was kind of like, I didn't want it to be about like, oh, congratulations, this is going to happen. Not that that's a bad thing, but it just didn't feel right to me. So I was just like, we're hopeful and we're just gonna see what happens.
Yeah, we had told our family and friends kind of within the first couple trimesters, and then instead of announcing online, we just took, nothing was on social media, but we did do a paper announcement to family and friends. And you know, I'd say are more spiritual, but I was really moved when we lost our first son, of how many people prayed for us. And I was just like, think it's so powerful. And so in that announcement, we like listed our registry, but we also just made it very clear that we would be so grateful for any prayers, good energy, whatever you want to send us. And we did that at like 30 weeks, because I was able to do like our friends did a little photo shoot with my husband and I and the bump, and that worked really well for us. And then on social media, we announced when he was our side, surprise. I mean, everybody we told, that most people knew, basically, is what I'm trying to say. It was just, friends of friends and that type of thing that just kind of, waited. But yeah, it was worked for us. And I really admire people that, do it sooner and all that. I just had a hard time because we had announced with our first son at 15 weeks, and then, lost him at 21. And it was just hard. It was hard to announce to everybody that he had passed away. And I just thought, yeah, the people we told early on are the people that, are our closest people. And so everybody else can just wait. Yeah.
So I know one thing about, pregnancy after loss, and it's all dependent upon what doctor you have. Some doctors are willing to treat you with more ultrasounds, more things like that. Some are not, just treat you like a normal pregnancy. So what was your experience like? Did you get extra monitoring? Did you have an understanding doctor, or were they just kind of like, no, just normal pregnancy?
I actually switched doctors. I switched OBs because of my first experience with the ultrasound tech, with the miscarriage, where she just seemed, and I get it, like they want to separate themselves emotionally probably, but she seemed really cold. She told me to stand or sit still. And then she was the main ultrasound tech, of course. So even though I had a pretty good doctor, I ended up just switching practices because most of my time in that practice was going in there for blood work to see if my levels went down and so many other things that I just felt like it was too much to go back there. In the practice that I went to, they would rotate me a lot, and they had a midwife as well. And I always felt that the midwife spent more time with me. She would do things that maybe the other doctors wouldn't do because she knew I'd been through loss and seemed really understanding. So even though they wouldn't always maybe give me an ultrasound if I wanted another one, she actually had this portable ultrasound machine that she made me feel reassured one day bringing that out. And I was like, oh, if I would have known you had that, I would have asked her that every time. But also I was also considered a either geriatric or advanced maternal age. So just because of that, I was fortunate to get more ultrasounds, not necessarily because of the loss. So I guess I took that as a good thing and I also ended up getting COVID during this pregnancy, this past one. And that made me even more anxious because I was worried about, of course, like now is COVID going to be like a reason of something happening? And because of that, they give you an extra ultrasound toward the end just to make sure that there's no growth restrictions. So as much as I didn't want COVID and it was miserable, once things were okay and I made sure he was okay after that, it was nice to get that additional ultrasound just because of it.
Yeah, for me, my doctor was pretty good about doing the extra things, but it was only because I would ask. So he was treating me like a regular pregnancy, but if I said, hey, I want, this or that ultrasound or this or that test, he would be like, okay, I mean, everything seems fine, but like, I'll order it for you. So I was grateful for that. Like, I was grateful in one sense that he was not like he wasn't like, oh, something's gonna go wrong. Like he felt very relaxed. Oh yeah, seems like to be a totally normal pregnancy. And I was very grateful that that was the case. But I also was grateful that whenever I'd ask for something, he would just do it. He wouldn't question me. Really, he might say, yeah, seems fine. Like his growth is fine, but sure, I'll order you a growth scan or whatever. So I was very grateful he did that stuff for me. And I also had like out of hospital midwifery care on the side because she was my midwife before. And so I basically had her as my doula. And so she would do extra things for me as well and like talk me down when I was having anxiety on the phone, which was also really nice. And like I could send her, you know, if I had the Doppler and it was like, this is heart rate sound fine. And so like I had her to do extra things and she would order me things if I needed them. So early on in my pregnancy, I like texted her and she ordered me blood work, which was really good because that was before I was ever in with an OB. And then I had a member at our church. She works in a pregnancy center and does ultrasounds. And so she offered to do ultrasounds for me. So she did like early on ultrasounds that I'm like, I kind of figured if I had to get bad news, I wanted to get it from somebody who was going to be caring and gentle and not like a nurse or doctor that I didn't know. And because with my daughter, I found out, you know, that she had passed in the hospital, but I was by myself. Like I went into triage, you know, to be induced, and the nurse couldn't get her on the monitor and got a doctor, just a hospitalist, to come and do an ultrasound to confirm and all that before they ever grabbed my husband. So I was very afraid to find out bad news by myself again. And I at least wanted, if I had to find out bad news, it to be somebody who like knew me and cared for me. So that was kind of a way of protecting myself. But I just like set it up in a way that I had so much support. And even though the doctors weren't like do that themselves, I said, hey, I had a loss. I want to have non-stress tests done. I want to be treated as a high-risk pregnancy. And they did it, which I was very grateful. I had nobody fighting me on anything. I had non-stress tests twice a week in the third trimester. And I was very, very, very grateful for that. That I think contributed to me not being super anxious all the time.
I can add a little bit. So I switched doctors as well. I went with my pregnancy for my daughter with the doctor that actually recognized that I was in preterm labor, because I just felt like her clinical knowledge and she knew my history. And basically for my pregnancy with my daughter, we were really checking for shortened cervix for up until like 24 weeks or so, to see if we needed to do like cerclage or something like that, but I didn't need that. But overall it was like only checking for that because that's what happened last time. It wasn't kind of like, for me, I was always really disappointed in like just the overall comprehensive care of, you know, kind of a high risk pregnancy, of checking, you know, growth, checking, you know, I'm hearing a lot about, you know, kind of if moms have like blood clot issues, you know, which can cause things. There's just so much unknown in maternal fetal medicine that it just can really get you down, you know, that I have zero answers in why my son was born at 26 weeks. And also nothing of like why or how he passed. So it's just a mystery, and it to me it's just really sad where, you know, medicine is at these days with maternal fetal medicine and just pregnancies in general. I think it's what Amanda did sounds really great, with having that loving, caring like midwife as someone on your side. That's definitely something to consider doing in the future.
So what was the hardest part about being pregnant after loss?
For me, it was just the unknown, not knowing what this pregnancy would result in. And unfortunately, my brain was trying to protect me. So I really, truly didn't think he would be born alive until like 10 minutes before he was out of me. I thought, okay, at this point they could just pull him out. You know, the brain protects us and that's okay. I recognize that. But for me, it was just take it day by day. Different. My therapist, who had a loss herself at 40 weeks, she said, it's, you know, different baby, different story, you know? And so that was my mantra was different baby, different story. And yeah, for me, I tend to love to know what's going to happen next and have that false sense of control that we all think we have. And I knew that I had no control over this other than just taking care of myself. You know, we didn't have answers either as to why our baby had passed. And so facing that too and saying, well, you know, I hope this isn't some kind of genetic thing or something that could, you know, that would happen again. But yeah, just the fear of the unknown. And I feel like I'm, in a lot of ways, yes, we've made it, but also now when you're a parent, you know, there's a whole new batch of fears that I didn't let myself think too far ahead. So I really didn't prepare for the actual like parenthood piece. I was just trying to get kind of through the pregnancy, and it is kind of a sad thing. I couldn't be maybe as present as I'd hoped, but it's what got me through. So yeah, for me, it was just the unknown.
I think for me, there was 3 things. One was the wait. It just felt like the longest pregnancy ever. 2 was people treating it like it was my first pregnancy and not acknowledging that I was in some way a mother prior or having been through pregnancy before. So everyone just acted like everything was new. And, you know, it just would hurt when I felt like that my other losses weren't honored. And then also just, yeah, like Katie said, the unknown, and just every scan, I would just hold my breath until I knew that there was a heartbeat or everything was okay. I just wanted to know right away that things were okay. I hated like the searching just to see what was going on. But yeah, every scan just made me really nervous.
So is there anything in particular that you found helped you with your anxiety, like during pregnancy?
For me, it was having a therapist that had a loss. You know, for her, it was maybe 30, 40 years ago. But I think she did disclose to me with not too much detail that I think she had lost a son, maybe I think her first as well. So her having that experience really helped me, just really was there for me for the majority of my pregnancy. And so it got me to where I was 30 plus weeks, being in a really optimistic mindset that at the beginning of the pregnancy, I was not at all. So my number one answer for me was therapy, having a therapist that understood and kind of rode through the highs and lows with me, and, you know, kind of kept me distracted and you know, and doing things during that pregnancy to kind of get me to that finish line, and being at a place where I was like, there's no other option but this for this to go right. Like, we've been through too much, that I just kind of believed in God and the universe that things were just had to go right for us, for my daughter.
I think for me, what helped me was just some of the people around me. I definitely I mean, I think it was helpful having a toddler, challenging at many times because toddlers are, but that was a distraction that was welcome. But also, I have personal friends in my life who have also had some pretty serious losses, and that was very helpful, just to have people that I felt like understood and could encourage me and pray for me and just be there for me when I was struggling. I was just very, very grateful for that. And then another thing was my midwife. I mean, she cared for me in my last 2 pregnancies, and so she'd been through with me through all of, like, just some of the hardest things in my entire life. And she's just a gem of a person, and so I'm just so grateful that I had her support. And she had even moved states and she was still willing. She came all the way back out to California to support me during my birth. And I'm very grateful for that. So I think those are the main things that really helped me get through it. Distraction and like support. And then, like I said earlier, I think the having the non-stress test at the end really helped me to feel positive that things were going well and like nothing was going to be missed, because it was every couple of days.
Same thing. I think it helps to talk to people, and I lined up so many people, whether it was like other women that had been through it. I had a doula as well. I had a grief counselor, and I had the pregnancy after loss coach. But I think it just helped to constantly have people to talk to. And then I probably utilized the on-call doctor line too much as well, because whenever something seemed to worry me, it was after hours, and they were really understanding.
So I know that the term rainbow baby is something that not a lot of people like to use. I personally do, but just curious, do you guys like that term? Do you not like that term? Like, is it something you use?
I do. I think it's a good way to acknowledge my daughter who was lost without straight up talking about her all the time. I'm sure people probably get sick of it, but I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, look, I'm not going to get over my baby dying. Like, I'm not going to get over it. So it's going to always be a part of my life. And that's not his identity. You know, his identity isn't just wrapped up in that, but that is a part of it. Like, that's part of his story. I mean, he wouldn't be here without her having died. Like, so I just wouldn't have him. I wouldn't have gotten pregnant that quickly. I wouldn't have been able to. So there's mixed emotions there, but I do like that term. I think it's a good way to acknowledge it, and I like the meaning of it, that it's like hope after a storm. And that's what the last year before he was born, that's what it felt like.
Yeah, and same. I held on to the rainbow concept a lot. I think it helped get me through, and it was a way to kind of honor my losses in all of the things. Like I wore a rainbow dress or did something with rainbows for my announcement, and then for the maternity photos I got to use your skirt. And I think it was just nice to honor, even if I didn't want to always talk about it. So I have a stepson, and same thing, we weren't going to go into too much detail, but with like the big brother shirt that we got him, to let him know, we put a rainbow on it just to kind of have that hidden meaning.
And I think a lot of parents have symbols, for the child or children that they lost, so that the rainbow kind of gives a symbol to, your living child or your hopeful living child. So just kind of having those symbols are helpful when you're going through something like this. Like kites represent my son Declan, and then Isla will always be my rainbow girl. And I loved wearing the skirt, to really kind of always remember that time with her, because I didn't take a lot of photos and things during my pregnancy.
For me, I think it's a beautiful symbolism. However, for me personally, it just doesn't resonate for me. I just say my second son, and that's what feels good to me. I don't get offended if someone says, oh, like Fang, your rainbow. No. It's just when I'm speaking about him, that's what I choose to, or I just choose to use his name. But I do support, obviously, I think it's wonderful that it resonates with so many people. But I guess I'm on the other end of this of like, yeah, it doesn't really like kind of, isn't something that really resonates with me personally. So if someone says that, I won't correct him or anything, but for me, I just use like, oh yeah, he's my second son, and that's pretty much, that's what I do. I do love rainbow symbolism though. I have a couple rainbow things and butterflies, representing my first baby. And yeah.
So if there was any advice that you could give someone who is going through pregnancy after loss, what would that be?
I think that some advice that I would give to somebody who is going through pregnancy after loss is to not, I know it's so natural to let your brain like try to protect yourself, but I didn't want to feel disconnected from my son. I think that it was very natural to want to protect myself and not feel connected to my son, but I forced myself to, and I don't regret that one bit. I'm very grateful that I did do that. I think I've always been very like eager to find out the gender of, my babies, and I'll find them out early. With him, I was like, yeah, I could find out at 20 weeks. I was also pretty convinced he was a boy. I was like, he's a boy, I already know. I don't need to find out till 20 weeks. I don't need to find out early. But then I think when I thought about it, I was like, no, I need to. I need to separate this pregnancy out from the last one and call him by name and connect with him, because I framed it like this for myself, that if I were to lose him and not have connected with him and not known, like not named him yet, and not, you know, and this is me personally, I think everybody's going to be different, but for me, I knew that if I didn't do those things, I knew I would regret it. I knew I would feel guilty if I lost him. And so I chose to find out his gender earlier and name him, and like force myself basically to connect with him in a way, because I think even if you are trying to protect yourself, you're still carrying that baby and you're still going to connect with them, even if you're mentally trying to protect yourself. But if you lose that baby, you're still going to feel the same. And then the way I looked at it was I was going to feel more guilt if I did continue the like self-protection thing. So I think that's probably one of my biggest my biggest advice, because I don't have any regrets doing that, and I made a point to document my pregnancy with him because I knew like I'd want that. Even if I lost him, I would want that even more. And so I think it gave a new perspective for me, but I did have to force myself to do that at the same time. So that's my advice, is just to celebrate still those moments and, still connect with the baby. Because even if you lose that baby, like it's still there.
I agree with a lot of that. I think I originally didn't want to bond so much because my first I bonded, and then it's like, well, before the first scan, it's like, why do I want to bond if I don't even really know what's going on? Because I would use those apps that would tell you like where they were at and that they are this, and then my baby didn't grow past 6 weeks, even though I was on my 10-week scan. So it was one of those things where I got really angry at the app for making me think that I was in a different place, because before the first scan, you don't always know. So I didn't really use those apps again, but I did still want to bond. And a lot of times, because my husband's in the military, he would be gone for weeks at a time. So it really was just him and I. So I was like, I really need to, whether it's like once he started kicking or just talking to him. And I would just recommend like reaching out with some community in some way, or just like some sort of communication, whether it's reaching out to other women that have been through it or a counselor. But I just think, whether you're writing stuff or also like you find a way to, like we're always overthinking, I think, after loss. So trying to find a way to shut down your mind for a moment too. I know not a lot of people can meditate or like meditation, but for me, either just walking, or I don't know if anyone's heard of ASMR, but it's kind of like not really meditation, but it's just different noises, kind of like white noise or like typing noises, things like that, that could just kind of like for one moment take my brain away from any worry. And that was a big thing, just finding, even if it was 5 minutes of just shutting my brain down for a moment, because otherwise I think I would drive myself insane.
I have a hard time shutting that off too, because I think you said you struggled with anxiety. That's me too. So yeah, it's like it just heightened it like 1,000 times. Does anybody else have any other advice to offer?
I just say find support. I loved my doula. She also had a loss. I didn't even know that until a couple sessions in, but find support in any way you can that like resonates for you. So I had a therapist that understood it, I had a doula that understood it, and then I had a team of, well, my OB specifically, who I actually changed OBs within the practice because I felt like she was a better fit. And she didn't have a loss or anything, but she just had a lot of respect for what I needed and the extra scans, that kind of thing, that if I needed it, she'd make it happen. So just really also give yourself time to connect with your baby that is inside of you and then your baby who passed away. Like I would sit on our porch and listen to these chimes that were gifted to us when we lost our first son. And I would connect with him and I would talk to him and I would connect with Finn, my second son. And it was like I just gave everything space. You know, I gave my grief space, I gave connection space, and then I allowed myself to connect or not the rest of the day. You know, it's like I did that. It was hard, but like, and as it went on, it got easier and easier. And then count the kicks I did at night, and that helped me feel connected to him too, because I would just be really present with his activity and I'd be like, whoa, that was a big one, and you know, and then it would also give me reassurance that he's doing okay in there. His activity was, you know, was normal, you know, his usual. So.
Okay, well, as we wrap up, is there anything else that anybody would like to add or share? No? Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for all taking the time to come on today and talk about pregnancy after loss. It's something that's definitely obviously prevalent in the loss community, and it's a very stressful and anxious time. So it's nice to know that others are feeling the same things that you feel as you go through it. So I just want to thank you guys so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Sarah. This was great. It was
you.
nice to meet you all.
You too.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much to these amazing ladies for sharing their stories and their experiences with us. Pregnancy after loss is definitely a very distinct experience from a, quote, traditional pregnancy. There's a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety and a lot of grief that all come up all at once sometimes. And these feelings can make it hard to fully enjoy the pregnancy. Honestly, it takes away a lot of our joy. We're always afraid the next ultrasound will bring bad news, that there won't be a heartbeat, that there'll be something wrong with the baby. Even before this point, we're afraid maybe we won't be able to get pregnant again. What if this was our last chance at having a baby? Or what if it was our only girl and we only get boys from now on, or vice versa? There's just so many questions and so much anxiety involved, both in trying to get pregnant after loss and in going through a pregnancy after loss. I've been through pregnancy after loss more than once, and each time was honestly terrifying. It doesn't help either that many doctors don't understand our fears and concerns. They expect us to just move on from our loss and move forward. They expect us to not be afraid. They won't give any extra monitoring for reassurance. Some don't even offer reassuring or supportive words. All this to say that there's a long way still to go in the area of healthcare regarding pregnancy in general, and more specifically, in pregnancy after loss. What was your experience like? Were you afraid or full of anxiety? Or were you calm and able to more enjoy the pregnancy? I would love to hear your experience. Feel free to email me at sarah@journeyforjasmine.com, or you can always message me on social media at journeyforjasmine. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.